All right, so we got a few referrals this weekend. We have a call with a brand new first-time buyer today. So you guys are gonna see the process a little bit of what that looks like and just how I do those calls. Well, I'll just kind of start out with the whole spiel that I kind of give, and then feel free to interrupt me or save your questions for the end, but basically just kind of a rundown of kind of how it all works, what you're looking for, what we do, and then kind of what the next steps are once we do it. And basically, this is where it all starts. You get that app filled out, and then once it's filled out, all I need from you is some documents, depending on how you guys are paid, if you're W-2, if you're self-employed, anything like that. Once you get that app filled out, you upload the documents, 30 days pay stubs, 2 years worth of W-2s, so at this point in time, 2024 and 2025, and then 2 months of bank statements to show you have assets just to cover any closing costs or down payment that we may need. Once I kind of get all that from you, I do video pre-approval, so I'll actually shoot you a video that's specific to you and kind of what you're looking for, what you're qualified for, and I'll have a bunch of questions in there such as, you know, what's your max comfortable monthly mortgage payment, you know, where do you guys want to be ideally versus, you know, what's realistic on top of that of, you know, most likely it does kind of hurt to get a mortgage. It is expensive. It's not cheaper to buy than rent. In the long run, you have the benefits of obviously owning a home.
We're renting, we pay almost 34.
Definitely depends on the quality changes a little bit. If you're renting at 34, you probably have a pretty nice rental. You know, versus the home, you can get some nice stuff for $450 or $3,400 a month, excuse me, but a lot of it will just depend on, you know, the program itself as well as the area you guys are trying to buy. Usually about 2 years is your break-even point to when you sell, you know, you're paying realtors, you're paying fees, stuff like that. So anything keeping it beyond 2 to 3 years, usually you're adding appreciation, so you're making more money on it. It's a little different right now with everybody that bought in like 2021 when the market was at its absolute height. It's kind of, you know, standard options there. It hasn't gone up nearly as much in those couple of years, but also that's when the 3% rate hits. So, you know, obviously inflation just shot up during that. So
how long, once we fill out what we need to send to you, how long is that turnaround?
Yeah, so usually about 48 hours, and that's kind of the maximum that I give. So if you were to do it tonight and then send me all the documents by tonight, I could most likely have your file done and back to you with a video pre-approval by tomorrow. So, you know, let's say you're comfortable, you're shooting for that, you know, 3,400-ish a month. Like, hey, you know, 450 is 34, 475 is this amount. 500 is this amount, 525 is this amount. So you can kind of see as you go through the numbers of like, okay, where do we want to be based on the monthly budget to be really comfortable kind of where we want to be at. It's funny having these conversations because you don't really learn a whole lot. It's kind of like just some basic questions. Then most of the information is done through the application. And that's when you really get the real numbers. And something you'll hear me say just because I'm annoying about it is real numbers make real decisions. That's kind of been my thing since I got started in this, was like I never did this with the lender before I got into the business, and I didn't buy a house when I first got in 5 years ago, so I had no idea. And then I started looking at everything. I was like, wow, I wish I would have just sat down and gone over numbers with someone so I could at least understand what I want to do. You're not locked into anything. You're not, you know, we don't force you to do anything. You don't have to buy. It doesn't cost you anything to do pre-approval. So it's just basically getting numbers so you guys can make your best educated decision moving forward.
Right.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come home today. Oh God, there's no legs on. Our beautiful butterfly has sprouted from the cocoon that was in Christina's office and heart and is flying to its new home. The loan officer that we think has presented the most spirit this week. Can I get a drum roll, please? This week, our loan officer that has the most spirit is Latasha.
All right, so what are we actually looking for in like an initial consult? And I know I'm a couple days late on this, honestly. It took me a while to actually watch that back and start editing this. But what are we actually looking for in initial consult? So when I meet with a client for the first time, I'm trying to get a couple different things kind of figured out. First off, what's your budget? What's gonna be realistic for you as a client to actually jump in and say, okay, how much do I need monthly? What are the main questions you have? Most people, the biggest pushback I get is, hey, I don't want my credit hit. I don't want to pay you for anything. Kind of what does all that look like? And then a lot of my clients, I do talk through Cal HFA or down payment assistance. Now, it's not just Cal HFA. I use all sorts of down payment assistance, but that's kind of one of the most used ones that we use in general. In my opinion, it's one of the best ones, but it's only worthwhile if we use seller's credit. So that's a whole different story for a different time. But in this console, as you just saw, it's a lot of just getting people prepared for, hey, a mortgage is not cheaper than your rent. You know, it's not going to necessarily be cheaper. How much do you feel like you can afford? What do you feel like is your max? And then for me, it's really just to talk through what is going to be the most comfortable for you, and understanding that the process starts here. It doesn't end here. And now I know I've told my story, and if you look through my other videos, you can see my story that I didn't go through this process before I was ready to buy a house. I thought I knew what I was doing back years ago before I got into the mortgage industry, where what I did was actually follow Dave Ramsey, which I don't think he's got bad advice, but I don't think he has the best advice for most people that are looking to buy a home, just depending on kind of what they're looking for. So his advice is to save 20% down. So that's what we did. We got rid of all the rest of our debt. We did our best to save our 20% down, and we paid off a bunch of stuff. We were paying off student loans. We were paying off all our debt. We didn't buy because we weren't fully paid off, and we were like, well, it's better to pay everything off because we don't want to be in a ton of debt while we're buying a house, which is good advice, but it depends how good you are with your money. If you know how to budget and you're decent with your money, a lot of times it makes more sense to buy sooner and keep the cash in your pocket than it does to do it the other way around. Now, again, a lot of what those calls are doing is you're kind of getting people ready. Hey, it's not realistic that you want to pay under $2,200 a month in California. Hey, it's not realistic that we're going to do this. Hey, it's not realistic that we're going to bring $0 to the table. It's possible, but it's not realistic. And that's kind of how all those things are, is they're all possible. It's possible to do a lot of things. It's not necessarily always realistic. So kind of the goal in those consults is to set expectations. You know, people have their expectations of what they think is going to happen versus what actually happens, and it's really just making sure you're setting those expectations of this is what is happening versus what you think is going to happen, so that when you actually get through the process, they're not surprised by a monthly payment being higher than they wanted to. They're not surprised by knowing that there's other things happening through the loan process. They're not surprised by the fact their closing costs are 2.5%, and there's fees to use down payment assistance program. That's kind of my goal, is that you're not surprised through the process. We're going to have a conversation once up front, and then again and again and again after that, to make sure you understand what you're going through. So that's it for me this week. We're going out on a vacation, so I'll throw a little bit of that in here, but yeah, that's what's really cool about this job, is just setting those expectations and make sure people understand what they're getting into.